Hi folks. I have been putting off doing laundry, washing my clothes for way too long now. You know, I wanted to do this outside, but as usual, as is in my neighborhood often, this weather here is just gray and moist. The weather is often gray and moist here. So I just thought today I'll just air out my dirty laundry in my living room and we could chit-chat, I don't know, about current events or whatever comes to mind as I air out my dirty laundry. Let's see, current events, you know, as I filmed this, it's been just a little over a month since America elected a new president. And did you hear that recently he ordered some revenge in the way of firing a bunch of missiles into Syria? That's right. I said revenge. Because America is openly saying this is retaliation for attacks on their interests in Iraq. I thought, like, firing missiles as an act of revenge for recent attacks on interests in Iraq. And I had to think about this for a minute. I thought to myself, when we're talking about American interests in Iraq, are they referring to interests in the way of military bases, many of which are there due to an illegal war? Can you imagine? Let me just throw a scenario at you. Can you imagine if I broke into your home, literally broke in, destroyed everything, shocked and awed you, took out half of your damn family, and then I set up camp in your living room. I turned your living room into Camp Armstrong. And I stock it full of strongmen and explosives. And this living room, this is mine now. This is my territory, my interest, if you will. Meanwhile, due to the destruction and the chaos that I caused in your house, outsiders may or may not be trying to come in and cause even more chaos. You may gather some friends and try to evict me. But I'm just going to come at you with, if I leave, it'll all fall apart. You need me. And then I explain to you how I'm the good guy and this stolen land is mine. It's cool. I'm American. We got a lot of experience at talking about how stolen land is ours to defend. A United Nations charter makes it clear that the use of military force on a foreign sovereign state is only lawful in response to an armed attack on said defending state for which the target state is responsible. I'm just going to say it. The American invasion of Iraq was neither self-defense against an armed attack, nor was it sanctioned by the UN, but was also based on lies and propaganda. They lied to the American people about weapons of mass destruction, for example. And here's a fun fact. The American invasion of Iraq constituted the crime of war of aggression according to the International Commission of Jurists in Geneva. So I'm not the only one that thinks this. And in my humble opinion, I sit here and I wonder this criteria, these rules for war that they have, these recent missile attacks, do they also fit the criteria of an act of aggression? Just saying, looking at the details, they sure do feel like that to me. But what do I know? Not enough. And maybe you too. So I did some research for some fun facts for us. Because as somebody myself that grew up in America, not having a lot of money, and also as somebody that keeps up on current events, I'm a little addicted to reading the news. I know it's not healthy. And I am still in touch and talk with friends and family in America from time to time. And I'm aware that there's a lot of people in America right now that are in need, really need help. Can't go to doctors, can't feed their families, homeless, tent cities. And I gotta say it, Tupac Shakur, he said it best in Keep Your Head Up. They got money for the wars, but they can't feed the poor. let's get into it. Let's really air out some dirty laundry. Did you know, for example, that 1 in every 7th child in America will be born into poverty? And right now, 1 in every 6 kids in America lives in poverty. That's 11.9 million impoverished children in America. At the same time, around 500,000 Americans are homeless right now in America. 20% of those are kids. Around 47 million Americans depend on food banks for their next meal. In 2019, there were around 34 million people living in poverty in America. Children make up more than 14% of that number. And also in 2019, the official poverty rate, according to the American government, was at around 10.5%. And guess what? Statistically speaking, reality speaking, people of color, of course, are more affected, and the children of people of color make up 3/4 of those numbers. Racial inequity in America is so visible in so many directions. Did you know that 40% of American children will spend 1 year living in poverty before they even turn 18 years of age? And now here's where I get really angry, because even with this really high child poverty rate, you might ask yourself, what is the American government doing to tackle this? Well, we could look at, for example, the federal budget, their spending directed at things like this, right? And quite honestly, I found it pretty disgusting that the U.S. federal budget that is directed at children is around 9%. While the federal budget for defense, military, is at 15% plus half of all discretionary spending. It's like they just can't give enough money to the war machine. And let me tell you something. If 15% doesn't sound crazy to you, maybe you just don't have a concept of what do other countries spend on defense. I did my research on that one too. Hoo boy. So let's look at it this way. America spends around $732 billion on defense. That's 15% of all federal spending plus half of all discretionary spending. And how does that compare to defense spending in other countries? Well, check this out. So America spends $732 billion on defense. If you took the countries of China, India, Russia, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, UK, Japan, South Korea, and Brazil, combined what they spent, you would come to $726 billion. America spends more on the military than all of those countries combined. That seems a little ridiculous, especially if you have starving kids in your country, right? I mean, isn't that like the kind of stuff they say North Korea does? Invest more money in missiles than feeding their own people? Like, that's exactly what the American government says about North Korea. I think America might have more in common with North Korea than they're willing to admit. $732 billion is a lot of money. What are they doing with all of that money? Well, in my research shows, well, there's no easy way to say this. In my humble opinion, it's like, this poverty problem they have at home, it's like they're spreading it out all over the world. Let me explain what I mean. You see, for example, since the global war on terror was declared by America, U.S. military action abroad has displaced around 37 million people, according to a report out of Brown University. Those 37 million displaced humans as a result of U.S. military action include 8 million refugees and asylum seekers. they're spread out all over. There are 29 million displaced within Afghanistan, Iraq, Liberia, Pakistan, Philippines, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen. Let's put that into perspective, for example, in a way that your average American could maybe understand it. Displacing 37 million people is like equivalent to like removing all of the residents of Texas and Virginia combined, or almost all of Canada. And to just think about that makes me sick to my stomach. Can you imagine? I can't imagine what it's like to live in a war zone, see those bombs fall, watch your whole community be toppled, to run for your life. And so when I think about these refugees, these asylum seekers, well, it looks like, we know who makes a lot of them, but I thought to myself, who takes them in? Of course, I wondered, what about this country that's effectively making a lot of refugees and asylum seekers? How do they compare in the way of helping these innocent humans that are running for their lives because of your politics? And I mean, just to be clear, in regards to all refugees and asylum seekers in the world right now, it should be clearly said that not all are a result of direct military action. But they certainly had a hand in many, in my humble opinion. Doesn't take much research to find that out. But yeah, people running for their lives. Where are they going? So this one really surprised me. I learned a little something in doing my research on this one. So when it comes to the total refugee population, and you need to know that those numbers are a very rough estimate, and the percentage of that refugee population and what country, what percentage they take in, right? At number 1 is Lebanon with 21.8%. Number 2 is Jordan at 10%. And in those two countries, the majority of the refugees, asylum seekers that they are taking in are from Syria and Palestine. Turkey comes in at number 3, 5.1%. Liberia is at number 4. They take in 4.6% of the total refugee population. Uganda is at number 5, taking in 3.8% of the total refugee population. Nauru is at number 6. They take in 3.2. Malta takes in 2.7% of the refugee population. Djibouti, I love saying that word. I hope I'm saying it right. Djibouti takes in 2.7% of the total refugee population. Sweden is at number 9. Sweden is currently taking in around 2.7% of the total refugee population as well. It's an interesting list. I wonder how many of those countries are responsible for making refugees. Credible mentions on countries taking in the refugee population. Germany, according to what I read, takes in 1.5%. Ethiopia is at 0.9%. I didn't know that. And the great destructors, the United States of America, well, guess what? They take in 0.25% of the total refugee population. Just above Bangladesh. America. I'll tell you something. I hate numbers, but I don't know if I ever hated numbers as much as the ones that I researched for this video today. And I'll put links down below in the description, but I feel like statistics, they don't always tell the whole story, and are easily manipulated by the people in power. Another thing that I take from those numbers is, doesn't it feel like Americans like war? Like they prefer it? Like they prefer to spend billions of dollars on things that kill and displace millions of people from their homes rather than spending that money on some of their own people who are also without homes or regular meals or health care, acceptable living conditions, access to decent education. I digress. I'm just saying, if y'all like war so much, why don't you start a war on poverty. Dead serious. Take your interests that you often need to defend in the Middle East and, I don't know, maybe take them home. Go home. Imagine how many homeless could be homed in army bases. Well, it doesn't sound pleasant. But imagine how many hungry folk could be fed in your mess halls. A large percentage of which are children, hungry children. And you're buying missiles. Imagine both the pride your soldiers would have in being used for something good, and also the reduction in the level of mental illness and PTSD that you create if you had your soldiers doing something good, like building homes for the homeless. The mass amounts of homeless that you have while you're buying missiles. Just imagine the schools you could build, repair, and supply with, again, all the money spent on missiles. And just imagine if you used those interests for good, I just bet you wouldn't have to defend them as much as you seem to now. And these numbers are not getting better in the current pandemic situation. But who am I to speak? What do I know about complicated government affairs? I'm just some American gal who was a single mother, working more than 6 days a week, no vacation days, no health care provided for my child. I couldn't afford it, didn't get it through my employer. I lived in a trailer and watched both of my parents fight their good fight against cancer and watched them be buried under debt due to the capitalistic and, in my opinion, murderous healthcare system in America. And then, who am I? And then I sought a better life. I sought a better life in Germany, and I found it much better from the moment my feet stepped on this soil. This country has saved my life. And in my time here, I have met quite a few asylum seekers, refugees, people that have been through some horrific things. And some of them are running from things that my government did. And I'm sick of it. It's embarrassing. It's disgusting. It's time to go home, America. You are drunk on violence and infected with poverty. Your children are starving. You have no right to tell any other land how they should do anything. To all the rest of you, I really appreciate you watching my video, and till I come at you again with another video, I do hope that you're taking care of yourself the best you can right now.